My entire plan for Chicago has utterly failed. In 2 weeks, there's no way I can go from where I am now to running this marathon. Pretty much everything that could go wrong has went wrong. In the best case scenario, it's going to be a complete mess. My meticulous training plan has pretty much went out the window, and I've been forced to constantly adapt as the circumstances that I'm in have evolved. Look how much I'm sweating. This is from an easy zone 2 effort. I'm at 128 heartbeat, and I'm absolutely dead. And it's been very challenging. But that's part of being a runner. Being an athlete is as much about how you deal with setbacks and injuries as it is avoiding them in the first place. Even elite athletes get injured. It's just a normal part of the experience of being an athlete. So that's what I've done. Despite these disappointing circumstances, I've tried to stay as positive, as motivated, and as fit as possible. And I'm determined that even if I've got to walk or crawl it or whatever, I'm going to finish Chicago Marathon. So by the way, this video is part of a little series that we're doing around me and my goal to run all 6 of the original World Marathon Majors. The first one we did was kind of an overview explaining the motivation and what the marathon majors actually are. So if you're interested in that, there's a link for that in the description, and we'll put a playlist out as well. So I'm just in front of the laptop here, and I kind of just want to walk through at a high level what my training plan was and where things went wrong. I was following an 18-week training plan from Jack Daniels, the coach, not the whiskey guy. It's up to 100 miles a week, which focuses a lot on threshold and marathon pace sessions, building up that speed endurance with some speed sprinkled in there. The idea was 13 weeks of that training would take place in Europe, in Germany, where I was at the time, and then the rest in the UK, building up the base and speed. And then a friend is getting married in Bangkok. So then I would spend 4 weeks in Southeast Asia around that time, getting a bit of heat adaptation, which will then just give me that little extra push. And then for the last week, travel to Chicago, get over the jet lag, and then race, hopefully feeling some of the benefits from the previous 17 weeks of training, as well as that heat adaptation. On paper, an amazing plan. I also had all my nutrition figured out. I knew exactly what cross training and strength work I was going to do. Everything felt so good. I had it all in place. So let's look at what that actually looks like in practice. So what you're looking at here is Training Peaks. This is an application for athletes to sort of manage the training plan, put sessions in, log metrics and so on. It's kind of a one-stop shop for training, I guess. I won't go too much into that, but if there's appetite to learn more about the tools that I use to manage my training and so on, then I'm very happy to do a video on that. But for this, basically treat this like a spreadsheet where green means executed, red means I didn't do it, orange means close enough. So as you can see, week 1 starting June 9th, lots of green, pretty much all sessions were executed. Some tough sessions here. So for example, 5 miles easy, 6 miles at marathon, 1 at threshold and so on. Tough session, but it was off to a strong start really. Fast forward a few weeks and then you have the physio appointment. So basically at this point, the physiotherapist told me that I had a stress fracture and that I needed to stop running immediately and probably wouldn't be able to run for 2 to 3 months. He wasn't actually able to say directly it was a stress fracture. He said it was inflammation of the bone or whatever, but later it was confirmed that it is a stress fracture. And from that point on, you can see a lot more red on the training plan. But for every red session that you see, you can see a corresponding green session. And this is basically the key to how I managed to stay positive, motivated, and fit all in one. I basically just started doing other things, cross-training on the bike, swimming, elliptical, doubling down on strength training and stretching, and all of the other things that go around the running. The only thing I couldn't do was the running itself. But it meant that for me, someone who doesn't really do anything other than running, I was able to really get invested in cycling. I learned so much about how to cycle and how to ride the bike and be effective on that. I could feel a lot of gains, and that was really motivating to go into this new discipline and actually see progress, because when you first start at something, honestly, the momentum that you get, you pick up stuff so quickly before you start to plateau. So sure, it wasn't the same stimulus as running, but it was something that kept me very motivated and did manage to help me retain some degree of fitness, especially with doing sort of harder intervals and tempo and threshold sessions on the bike, which is totally possible. You can retain actually quite a bit of fitness there. So that's essentially how I was able to stay motivated despite everything that happened. So the thinking was there, I mean, I wasn't going to be able to run for, 8 to 10 weeks, but if I can fill it with cycling and whatever else, then at least when I get back into running before Chicago, I'll be ready to hit the ground running, I guess. And when that day came, actually, I realized I didn't have a clue what I was doing, and I made another massive mistake. So after about 10 weeks, I was actually getting better. There's a thing that you can do when you've got a stress fracture. It's called the hop test. Essentially, you do a few hops. You do a few hops to the side, a few hops back and forth. And if there's no pain, you're ready to go. It's not super scientific, but that's literally what the physio told me to do, which is hilarious. The thing the physio didn't tell me to do was what to do after that. So basically she said, once you pass the hop test, off you go. And when I did, after about 10 weeks past the hop test, it was a Saturday morning. I was just about to meet some friends for a park run. I was just walking the park run while I was injured. And I did the hop test, and obviously it was fine. And I knew I had the cardiovascular fitness because I'd been on the bike. So rocked up and then paced Dane, who edits these videos. I paced him to a 22-minute park run, I think. Just literally went straight in and just ran that. And that was completely stupid. What the physio didn't tell me was that when you come back after a stress fracture, you basically got to ease your bone back into things. You've got to do run walks, 1 minute on, 1 minute off kind of thing, very short distances, and just build your body back up to that pressure. So basically straight after that, started to get pain in my leg and decided to back off again for another week. Then I started doing run walks, built back up gradually. And, I was kind of in a very good place where I was starting to be able to do longer distances and stuff, still walking and running. But then something came up that I just couldn't resist, and that thing was the Great North Run. The Great North Run is such a special event, and I knew that running 13 miles after having not run for basically 10 weeks was a recipe for disaster, but I did it anyway because for me, it's just such a buzzing event. Like, it finishes in South Shields, where I'm from. And for me, I talk about this in the first World Marathon Major video, but basically it's just something I had to do. So the next day after the Great North Run, I went to physio, and she basically told me to take a rest for a week. On the next Sunday, do a hop test. If it's fine, start building back up from the Monday. So that brings us to now, actually, because today is that Sunday, and I did the hop test and it's fine. So from tomorrow, I'll be building back up the mileage with walk runs, and the race is 4 weeks today. So right now, I'm still following through on the plan. I'm here in Manila in Southeast Asia, getting that heat adaptation, which, while it's not going to give much benefit in the grand scheme of things, it's still good to have that little boost come race day. And depending on how this physio's plan goes, I might actually be able to run the race. I'm just going to build up the mileage gradually, get the benefits of the heat adaptation, and then hopefully in 3 weeks' time when I arrive in Chicago, I'll be in a position where I can actually run. Maybe I'll actually be there on race day with a little bit of fight to give. Who knows? Yeah, I'm never going to hit the goal that I had, which was 2:35. I'm not even going to come close to that. And I'm on plan B. And maybe I'll be in plan C if I've got to walk it. But as I said, I'm definitely going to finish it. I think as the years go by, or maybe because the years are going by, I've realized that I'm a bit of a type A personality in some ways, which I hate to admit. It's not something that I ever thought I would say about myself, but it's definitely true. And so, like, when I had this training plan all laid out or whatever, not being able to do that was quite disappointing. But at the end of the day, you can't control a lot of things, and the perfect plan is probably not perfect. There are a million ways to achieve to skin a cat. I didn't want to say it, but there you go. There are a million ways to skin a cat. And your plan that you had, or my plan, or whatever, like, that's just one of many ways to achieve the thing. So me going on the bike or whatever, it's an alternative route, and that's also fine. So just recognizing that, there's no such thing as the perfect plan helps to kind of swallow the pill you know, in terms of having to not follow the plan that you'd set out and that you had your heart set on. Another thing I want to say on mindset is that because the race at Chicago, even in the best scenario at this point, is probably going to be slower than I would have liked, it means that the bar is so fucking low for when I come to do the next world major marathon that at least I'll be able to say at the next one that I've definitely improved in the journey. So yeah, it's kind of, in some way it's a positive that I'm setting the bar so low, and that's a nice way to frame it. And I think you know, if you're racing or whatever, if you don't achieve your goal, it means that you've learned something, which is always a good thing, and you learn a lot more from failure. And when you come to race again, whatever that distance is, whatever that race is, you can see a very tangible, hopefully you can see a very tangible improvement. And that's a nice feeling. So, you know, you got to find the positives where you can. Just wanted to say a little quick note on heat adaptation. So obviously I can't run outside, which was the main idea. And despite all my best intentions, impossible to rent a bike here in Manila for some reason. And even though I've seen people riding around on bikes. So I'm forced to use this fucking battered old stationary bike in the gym. Look at the state of this, man. Look at that computer from the 1980s. This is actually a recent machine. It's got a symbol on that means that it was made after Brexit, so it's at least less than 10 years old. But it feels like it's from the 1980s. As you can see, I'm already sweating from the humidity. And that's with the AC on. Yeah, just the point I want to make is that obviously I'm not getting the sessions and I want to get it, but I'm just trying to make the most of it. And the beauty is, even if I'm here in the gym, not exposed to the heat directly, with the AC on, doesn't matter, because the heat adaptation is all about general exposure. You don't have to be exposed while training. So if I'm just outside, out and about for a few hours a day, hopefully that'll give me some benefits. That'll translate to training as the body just simply adapts to being in that heat and humidity. Anyway, that's enough of this tangent. Just a quick update. I just did a hop test after a workout to see if I could go for a run. And there was some sharp pain in my right shin, where exactly in the point where I had the stress fracture. So it's not looking good. I've got a call with physio in a couple of days, so see what they say. But yeah, big red flag. So 3 or 4 weeks to go, and not looking so good. The humidity is fucking me up. I've just finished a tempo ride on the bike, and honestly, the humidity was just insane. I was just absolutely drenched. And look at my face. I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but I look like I haven't fucking slept for about 6 days. It's insane. I don't know if I'm going over the top, perhaps. Yeah, but definitely feeling easier. So the heat adaptation is definitely taking effect. Whether it'll have any benefits in Chicago, we shall see. On another note, I'm running again. I did a 5K effort, 2 5K efforts this week, one of which was about 17 minutes 40 or so, which is pretty good considering it's been nearly 3 months of like not really running. Probably pretty stupid to go straight into that, but I've been doing a bit of easing back into the running with the run walks, and like, yeah, despite a little scare, the pain's been pretty much gone. So feeling strong. We'll see where we end up with this whole thing, but yeah, look how much I'm sweating. This is from an easy zone 2 effort. I'm at 128 heart rate, and I'm absolutely dead from this humidity. I'm in the gym, no AC, windows closed, and it's a new layer of challenge for sure. It's 2 weeks until the marathon. Just woke up, was about to go for a run, but my shin was hurting. Did the hop test, and the pain is pretty bad. This is from like running a few, I don't know, 9 miles or something. So I don't know how I'm supposed to run a marathon. Yeah. But I feel pretty good. Like, it's weird. In 2 weeks, there's no way I can go from where I am now to running this marathon. Yeah. So it's 5 a.m. on the Thursday before Chicago Marathon, and I'm doing a little run walk session, which should tell you everything about where my fitness is at. Every single time I've tried to get back into running and try to build up the miles, the pain in my shin has come back, or a pain somewhere else in that leg has come back, and it's just meant that I haven't been able to train properly. I've tried to do as much as I can on the bike, but I just haven't been able to get the fitness or the endurance that I need to really race a marathon. But I'm committed to finishing it. But it could go anywhere. It could go, around the 3-hour mark, which is probably the best I'm going to get, given all the fitness that given my current state of fitness, basically. Or it could be like 6 hours if I have to end up walking because of the pain. After a 3-mile session, for example, just the shortest thing you could reasonably do, I do start to feel a bit of pain in there, and I am anxious that if I run 42 kilometers, that I'll do some long-term damage. I'm hoping that won't be the case. I'm going to take a massive rest after this, but yeah, that's definitely on the back of my mind, and I probably don't sound as deflated as I should, but I think I've just come to accept the situation, and there's nothing I can do at this stage. It's done. There's a lot to learn from this whole experience, and now it's just a case of getting out there and trying to enjoy the day as much as possible. There's not going to be any records set, personal records, so just enjoy the experience, enjoy being here in fucking Chicago suburbia, and let's see what happens. So tomorrow is the big day. I'm feeling kind of positive. I think I can at least put in a decent shift and get a time that I'd be, kind of happy with. Obviously, I'm not going to hit the target that I originally set, but I think I've kind of figured out the pace and strategy, and I think I can go for a 3-hour race, sort of 650-minute miles, with negative splits, sort of taking the first half a bit more conservative towards 7-minute miles, and then trying to see how I feel in that last 10 kilometers, and then just kind of blast it out through there and kind of round it off to a 3-hour session. But the leg is still hurting. Should be healed by now, but it actually definitely isn't. There's still some pain there. And I kind of just want to acknowledge the fact that, I know I'm taking a big risk by doing this. If I was to ask a professional, they might say it's a bad idea. And I'm very aware of that and understand the risks associated with that. And I'm just saying that to say, if I'm going into this not aware of that, if something goes wrong, it's on me, you know what I mean? I'm not being naive, and I'm certainly not trying to put the blame on anyone else. I think other people in similar situations, I think you've got to make a decision for yourself how valuable that event is or whatever to you. And for me, this is important, and I think it's a little risk, so I don't think it's going to be a big deal. And I intend to take off a long time, maybe 2 months after this, to really give my body a chance to recover from this whole ordeal. I'm just keen to just put it behind me and have a good day tomorrow, and worst case scenario, I end up running it in 6 hours by walking a little bit or whatever, but it'll be an experience. I certainly feel in a better place than I have in the last few weeks, so yeah, let's see. So, hello. I am absolutely goosed. Yesterday was the race, and it went better than expected in some ways, and in some other ways, it absolutely demolished me. So, in the end, I got 3 hours and 5 or so minutes, which, if you'd asked me 2 weeks ago, if it was possible, I would have said absolutely not. So I guess I should be happy with that. It's totally written me off. I'm absolutely wrecked. But I am happy with the results. I am happy with it. I think given the circumstances, the fact that I got a stress fracture a few weeks into training, the fact that I basically trained for this whole thing on the bike, the fact that my longest run before the race was the Great North Run, which was a half marathon. That was my longest run, and my second longest run was only 10 miles. So I've not had the training on my legs at all for this, and certainly very little at marathon pace. Neither of those runs were even close to the pace I went for at this marathon, which was sort of 650-minute miles. So basically, I can't complain. It was a result. I think it was as good as I could do in the situation, but also it took a massive toll. Even though I've had faster marathons, the way I felt in this marathon was much, much, much worse. I fueled well, I felt good in the first 16 miles maybe, but from then on it really became a slog. It became very clear after mile 16 that my body just wasn't used to this sort of abuse. While I had the stamina for it, my body it couldn't take the impact. And it took some real mental energy to dig in and actually push through. And then sort of mile 20, it was really getting tough. My body was sort of giving up. Mile 22, my quads just kind of blew up. They just literally, I don't know, it was so painful. Every stride was painful, and I couldn't actually get into a full kind of rhythm. And I was doing these little tiny steps, and I decided to just do that really fast, hoping that would get some speed, but it didn't. I couldn't get past those 7:38-minute miles at that point. So I decided to stop and stretch, and then I started cramping up in my hamstrings. It was horrible. So I just decided to keep on going and just do the death march, get the whole thing over with. And honestly, there were tears rolling down my cheeks. I was just trying to be strong, I guess, and just kind of push through, but it was really excruciating physically and mentally just to get to the end of this thing. But then, so the last 0.2 miles or something, there's like a little hill that you go up just before the finish line. You come up a hill and then you turn left towards the finish. And I just got this boost of energy. I just decided to put the pain aside and just sprint up the hill. I just was so overcome with adrenaline. I started hyping up the crowd, which I've never ever done before. Yeah, I started hyping up the crowd, and everyone started cheering, and I just kept on pushing to the end, got over the finish line. I just fucking had a little breakdown, had a few tears, smiled, met some friends, and yeah, just tried to come to terms with what just happened. Like the physical and mental overwhelm at the end was as it is with all marathons, was just so immense in the best possible way. Yeah, you're kind of crying in a good way, I guess. Yeah, really insane experience. The actual race itself, kind of in general terms, was incredible. Like very, very, very much what you'd expect with an American city. Amazing atmosphere the whole way around. There's people the entire way, and then there was 54,000 runners there, so you're never alone. The runners everywhere, everyone's egging each other on. People have got fun signs, costumes, all this shit you'd expect from a big race, I suppose. Very much like the Great North Run. So can't complain at all in that regard. Yeah, I guess overall a really great experience and a lot learned in terms of the training and in terms of what it feels like to run without the training, I suppose. So yeah, in any case, that's me done for marathons properly for a while. I will do the Sydney Marathon in August next year, 2026. I've got 2 friends living out there who I'm going to stay with and visit, so it kind of makes sense to just tack that on as a little race experience, maybe go for sort of a 4-hour mark, just to tick it off the World Majors list while I'm out there and have a nice time. Not going to race it. And then next year, I'm just going to focus on shorter distance stuff. So 5Ks up to 10Ks, maybe some track stuff, just try to build up the speed the same way an elite athlete would, and then come back to the marathons in 2027 once I build up that base speed, and then I can start introducing the speed endurance and stretch that out, and hopefully just completely, hopefully just set some PRs in sort of 2027. So don't know which ones I'll do, but probably aim to do sort of one of the majors, London or New York or something next year, 2027, sorry. So yeah, that's sort of where we're going to be. If you're interested in following that journey of building up speed and exploring how you can get faster and then eventually applying that to the marathon over the next year or two, then, and of course, watch the journey through the world major marathons, completing all 7, maybe 9, once Cape Town and Shanghai are included, then please subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, like, it massively helps out, and see you in the next one.